Oh, okay. So let's see. So there was a bit of difficulty in getting a sense for things initially. I would surrender, and there would still be some residual checking, or what else? Subtle doing that I didn't catch, or something like that. But eventually, there was a point where it was just actually just yesterday where I spent a good chunk of the day just going through the last recording and practicing along with the recording, where I really got a sense for like, oh, this is how you do this. I got a better sense of it, and it was like letting everything happen by itself, or everything is already doing itself, or something like that, and just drawing myself into that quality, or like surrendering, falling into that quality. And I did notice a very significant leap or jump in the quality of the practice when I did that. It was much more tangible, the effect. There was more, there was less reactivity. There was more.
Yeah, sometimes more coughing happens. I'm sorry about that. Side effect of the practice. All right, sounds good. Any questions on anything?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. Where was it? So I have a little bit of confusion over noticing the emptiness or the dreamless sleep aspect. Although for now I just access emptiness directly. I don't really use dreamless sleep as the reference. Um, and
You
engaging
use what as a
surrender,
reference?
dreamless sleep,
Uh-huh.
and engaging surrender as everything just happening by itself. Like when I engage in surrender, as everything just happening by itself, and then I introduce emptiness. It seems like I can either like lean more into everything happening by itself or the emptiness. And if I lean into the everything happening by itself aspect, I lose touch with the emptiness. And if I lean into the emptiness, I don't know if I lose touch with it, but it's not as prominent, the everything happening by itself. And I didn't know if that was like a problem, or if there's anything to be rectified about that or something.
Do emptiness. And notice everything happening by itself. What do you feel the difference is for you?
One's a little bit more like open and maybe like obviously empty. The other one is I found because like I was like close to an episode yesterday, like most of the day, and like I noticed, and still do, that engaging in everything that's happening by itself is more effective, I guess. It just produces more visible results than engaging in emptiness.
Yeah. What if your understanding of emptiness was limited? What if emptiness actually includes dynamism, movement? It just doesn't name it. It still appreciates everything happening by itself. That's a way of describing it. It just doesn't think of it that way. It's still dynamic. So, understanding that little tweak to what you're describing as emptiness, tune into emptiness. And notice that the empty quality is happening by itself as well. Do you notice how that gives you more of a decent balance of both?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're using these adjuncts for what I personally describe as like form versus formlessness, masculine, feminine, yin yang, or what I've been putting in layman's terms to other people, spaciousness and fullness. Um, and yeah, basically, sometimes we'll find that we inadvertently lean more one way towards another when ideally we're finding something that perfectly includes like a balance of both without having to worry about it. Um, and so, yeah, it's all. This is where like shit starts to get really wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. Um, in the sense that none of these ideas are as fixed as people assume they are. And if you have a taste for what quality practice or being uh, points to, then you can use the direct experience as kind of like the leverage in saying that, okay, if you find that your version of everything's happening by itself doesn't also introduce an emptiness like quality, because if everything is happening by itself, then your thoughts are happening by themselves too. They're not your thoughts, they're just the practice is happening by itself. The experience of emptiness is happening by itself. And that's how it like completes. That's how it integrates both. If you go the emptiness route, well, the view of emptiness is also empty. And when it negates itself, because emptiness generally negates everything but itself, it kind of leaves you feeling empty. If it negates itself, then you come back to that same place of there being like a fullness combined with that spaciousness, with that vacuity, that openness. Um, Because if you negate the thing that's negating everything else, you're left with no divisions. When your mind and body are not seen as separate, then both are held equally. The empty quality is what the mind feels like when it's not projecting. The dynamic quality of the body is what happens when we're present within the body while we're not interpreting. So ideally you've got both, and you can use those reference points as kind of like balancing things. You can lean more into one than the other at times, but having this effortless balance that it's just like you click into eventually without even a reference for emptiness versus everything happening by itself, and that's pretty good, and it'll do. So there's a flexibility in there for you. Sometimes I'll do something similar myself where I'll notice that I'm tuning into something vast, but I'm losing touch with my body, and I just remember, oh, let my presence like be with my body as well. That's the how I make the tweak. I don't think of it as distinct qualities, because the presence should naturally contain all of it. If it's not, either your definition of what you're practicing is somewhat limited to constrain your presence, or you have like a habit of excluding your presence from that area, and a little nudge in that direction is useful for the time being. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Anything else?
So in the last recording, you mentioned at a certain point enjoying the relaxation and effortlessness of the surrender. But when I enjoyed it, it felt like it took a bit of effort. I don't know if that's supposed to be the way, or if there's like an effortless way to enjoy.
What, the emptiness?
In general, just the. Well, I guess it could be emptiness. It could be the everything happening by itself. Just the whole fact that relaxes the nervous system, the body. It's less pressured, stuff like that, and enjoying that.
What's difficult about enjoying that?
For me, I mean, maybe I can check again. Hold on. Yeah, it feels like it takes effort. Like I felt the pressure build up in my neck, in the back of my neck, when I tried to enjoy the.
Well, because you're trying to enjoy, what you have to recognize is there's a natural enjoyment. Why do you keep tuning back in? Why is it appetizing? Why does it feel like you're making progress? Because there's something that feels like you're heading in a better direction with every single moment of release and deepening. And so you notice how it's already enjoyable. You don't try to enjoy it, you notice how it's already enjoyable. Even if it's only a little bit. As long as it's just something, it's good. And as you appreciate that, as you enjoy the rest of the practice, the enjoyment grows. And so just continue sinking into what you're experiencing, just allowing that to happen, while also appreciating that there's the subtlety of pleasure, of your nervous system saying, oh, this is nice. And do you notice how much easier that is?
Yeah.
Yeah. With anything that we're doing, it's not about fabricating. It's not about making it happen. It's not about coming up with it. It's about noticing how it's already there. Like, I generally, at this point, because we've been at it for a while and, like, part of you intuitively gets it, I can just point you towards a quality and have you start experiencing it. But that's because we built on this like large habit of, hey, notice that when we intend something, a sensation arises, and it usually corresponds with what we're intending. So intend, allow, and appreciate. And that's everything. It's like, oh yeah, notice the sleepless quality. The moment you have a reference for it, you have something of it here to build with. If you're just imagining, if you're trying to have an attitude, you're presuming that it's not there, you're trying to make it happen, you're holding on to a view, and it's like, no, the entire thing is recognizing how something's already here and allowing that to become more prominent over time. So, yeah, it's the gist of it. That answer that for you?
Yeah.
Anything else?
So on a different recording, you mentioned doing surrender more completely or with more presence. What exactly is that? Is that because I obviously can't take effort, so I'm like, that doesn't really it doesn't really seem to mean anything that can be done or I can increase or something like that. Even though that seems to be the implication, but
So look. Put your hand up. Feel the inside of your hand. From the inside. You're not visualizing, you're feeling these nebulous sensations that are in this space. You notice how you're just present on the inside of your hand already?
yeah,
And do you notice how you easily feel like tingling, movement, like air, energy, as well as all the physical sensations?
yeah,
Yeah. So notice that what if your presence, what if your attention, it was like water? Allow it to expand and soak into the rest of your body in the same way it's in the hand. Because there's presence already within you as well. You're just activating, arousing it, bringing it to light by intending to notice it. And you notice how now it feels like instead of just being present in your hand, you're more presence with like your body, like there's a bubble of presence.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, notice that your presence impacts your entire experience, not just what you think the boundaries of your body is. So notice the presence continuing to open up into the presence that's already in the space around you. And beyond, even if we don't know what that looks like or means. And do you notice how it invites like similar qualities as the emptiness and everything happening by itself?
Hmm. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, the more you open up into the space around you, above you, and beyond, the more of the empty light quality starts to manifest. The more that you open up into the body, noticing how natural that is, the more you notice the everything happening by itself at a visceral, like kinesthetic level. Um, all of these things invite an expansion of presence from whichever way you have it limited, because usually we have our presence limited to being mostly active in our mind, but dormant everywhere else or dimmed down. All of these things release the filters gradually that keep your presence limited. complete surrender means that your presence naturally has included and become one with the entirety of your experience. Because if there are no distinctions, no filters, everything's already kind of one and connected, and you don't know it as distinct from yourself, from your own presence. So complete surrender just means that you're not experiencing the surrender of your hand alone. You're experiencing surrender being everything, saturating everything. Spaciousness is an adjunct and analog that we've used for presence. Sensation or feeling is an analog we've used for presence. And so because these things are described as felt experiences, and when you tune into them, they naturally expand, you're essentially writing the experience, the so-called technique or principle, as a vehicle to open up your presence or your awareness. And yeah, in that sense, that also would give you an inclination of what complete fullness might mean, complete emptiness might mean. It's simply the spectrum of peak saturation where it feels like everything is immersed in that quality. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
So that quality of that water-like quality, tuning into that took a bit of effort. Hold on. Oh, let me just notice if I can just notice it being there.
Yeah, don't see if you can. Just notice that you can. And go at it a little bit longer. Just allow yourself to like really give in to that quality that's arising. And if it feels like there are any sense of pressure, effort, remember what that might mean. Remember what can naturally happen now that you recognize that, oh, there's a holding, there's a tightness. Just letting that be included in the experience. And the sense of effort starts to dissipate more completely. And now it's really like feeling like it's happening by itself. You notice that?
Something's happening by itself, yeah.
Look, basically, intending itself, it's just an intention. We're used to creating a quality of pressure that we associate with effort after a lot of the intentions that we make. That's what we're used to. That's our habit. The bread and butter of all of this is like intend and release, intend and allow, in the sense that by going directly to notice it happening by itself or just enjoy it, you don't have to do anything, just be. Essentially, that's languaging that invites minimal creation of that like knee-jerk, I gotta make this happen because I'm not used to it and I don't think it's already there. Once you get really good at this process, you'll notice that you can intend without creating the pressure. And so it's merely just a reorientation. Oh, I'm noticing myself as a normal person, the normal things of life, and like the way that I divide things. And at another moment, oh, I'm noticing everything happening by itself. I'm noticing the openness. I'm noticing the fullness of presence. I'm noticing surrender. It's like, it's just shifting the lens. The lens allows your experience to look and be experienced differently. It's not anything you're doing to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it ever feels effortful, it means that you're attaching something extra beyond intending and allowing. Um, and that clarification of don't see if you can, because your system's already ready to listen to you. It's not going to fail you. Sometimes it can flicker, and sometimes it can start small, but it'll develop very robustly. It'll keep going. And so no matter what happens, when you intend, you're going to be able to notice something, especially now that like you're experienced enough to know what to notice. And yeah, if you have any sense of doubt or skepticism, um, well, that confuses your body because now it's trying to like not just manifest the purity of your intention, but also the fact that like you have doubt around it. And so your body's also going to reflect that. One of the ways it might do that is through extra efforting, or by not providing as much of the experience as possible immediately. The way that we think about these things also impacts the quality of it. Uh, when you really get to that point where it's like you can just confidently intend, regardless of your experience, regardless of how long you've been deepening, you can go very, very deep, very fast and gain amazing results. But yeah, uh, that's basically how the topic of effort works. That's why everything can be done in an effortless fashion, because effortless is the same as non-pressured, non-pushing slash pulling, just allowing, being, while simultaneously appreciating the quality, the felt quality, because a lot of us can sometimes associate allowingness or beingness with something purely spatial, purely formless. But we want to use these as analogs for presence. So we want to see these things and notice these things as everywhere, which we can, because truthfully, everything that we experience is something that's felt. And sensation is almost like an ocean. The attitudes that naturally arise out of intending are like flavorings to that ocean. They tint the water ever so lightly in a different kind of way. A quality of wonder, warmth, love, fullness, or beauty might tint it a little bit more yellow, make the water a little bit more warm, but it's still the ocean of feeling. So you're feeling everything as usual, but it's impacted by this flavor. Spaciousness gives you something a bit more neutral, same thing as emptiness. Um, for me, the allowing everything as it is, it's like, or noticing that everything's happening by itself. It's a bit more electric, almost bluish, in the sense that, for me at least, instead of like a natural radiance, which I guess I could tweak my understanding of everything happening by itself to manifest in that way, because everything is malleable, depending on your definition. Um, for me, it's more like vibratory things releasing from my body than like this natural glow of when I tune into the wonder. It's like the lightness of experience becoming more pronounced. And because all of this is in the spectrum of expanding and releasing presence, I naturally get the quality of my mind emptying out, not projecting, so emptiness becomes prominent. For me, wonder is visceral as much as it is expansive, so there's like a lightness and glowingness and fullness within my body too. And yeah, describing it as like water soaking into things, into your experience, that's the best way that I can describe what every single one of these practices does in some way, shape, or form. The flavoring of the expansion, like I said, or the presence, is different based on the entry point, but the resolution is still the same. You open up, you're more aware, you're more sensitive, and there's a natural balance and ease that starts to make itself known. And you don't necessarily play with these things as things to master per se. You just play with them, to see how easy it is. Because every time you try it with this understanding of, wow, this is like so easy, so simple, so powerful. Every time like you notice that, it increases your confidence, it diminishes your doubts, and the results are more and more robust, such that you get to that point where you can, ooh, I mean, I've never done that. Let me try that. Let's see. I'm going to intend how everything, to feel how everything is already solid. And for me, it manifests as a quality of like deep stillness, where it's like instead of everything being an ocean that's fluid and there are like ripples and bubbles, it's like, no, it's just like a solid, transparent block of experience. I can see in and through the block, but there's this tangibility of like just there-ness. It's playing with the lens of perception and seeing how malleable that is, which also gives you insight into just why these habitual ways of looking and relating to the world have the impact that they do on us. Because the key thing that gives you insight is noticing that, yeah, the more open, the less pressure, the less filters, the less assumptions, the better everything is. And this just gives you a kind of lever or like switch so you can tune in and out of it, and your experience will naturally compare and contrast, and the insights will sink into your natural way of being, which is why over time you've noticed that you fuss less about more and more and more. It's easier to just enjoy the simplicity of your life. Any comments or questions on that?
Mm. No.
Any other questions at all?
Um, this was from the same recording, but you mentioned in unending sigh of relief. Mm. Okay. So it's just another.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all of these things, especially if people that are familiar with the more abstract concepts or they've been given an orientation on them, because you can prime people by telling them your definition or how you understand it so that that flavors their experience. All of these things are generally associated with qualities that most people think of as opening and relieving, because, opening and relief and expansion of presence is a natural part of human life. It's what happens. We expand and contract habitually. By leaning into the mechanism that allows these qualities to similarly be enjoyable, which is that expansion and that ease, um, we're free to use whatever frame of reference initiates the recognition and amplification of that process. So it gives you a lot of fluidity in terms of how you can practice. Because yeah, if you understand like how these qualities are correlated with like so much of human language and how we engineer ourselves, it's not too difficult to reverse engineer the effects that were intended and experienced by certain kinds of traditions and mystics and, like, you know, Christianity will have its own reference of like words and ideas that arouse certain qualities, and as you contemplate these qualities, it changes the way your consciousness relates, that opens you up to these deeper dimensions of God that inform the experience of people who proclaim Christianity. Same thing with Islam, same thing with Taoism, with Buddhism, with Native American stuff. Sometimes people generally also use substances and specific kinds of rituals as analogs or something to initiate a sense of like being able to refer to that. But yeah, at the core of this has been human experience and how consciousness as expressing as a human is structured and built. Understanding that structure, we have leveraged it through the interface of language, which we're doing now. Except now we're kind of pointing in more and more in the direction of it's the direct experience that's beyond words. That's why you can call it just about anything and relate to it as anything. As you get more comfortable with this direct experience without words, you get more comfortable appreciating it directly without thinking about it. And it starts to just become something natural. So we're not here to master anything. We're here to experience these deeper qualities and aspects of ourselves again and again and again. Because it's simply by the practice of familiarizing ourselves with it and understanding how natural it really is that we're kind of conditioning our brain and our mind to naturally be tuned in and open to that. For you, what started increasing, especially from early on, was like the sense of spaciousness. Space is a lot easier for you to access nowadays than ever before because there's already like more of a hint of it online than when you initially started this stuff. You ever notice that?
The spaciousness.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit. A little hard to tell though, but maybe a little bit.
I mean, it's something that like you'd notice more if you had a habit of like reviewing your behaviors and approaches and attitudes over like the past few weeks, months, years, so on, as things have progressed. I've definitely noticed it, but for you, you'll probably notice it in, hey, have you noticed that your mind bothers you less? That it's quieter, you sabotage yourself less, you get less triggered, that there's more of a quality of ease and simplicity in more of your life than there was before. It's kind of like things have simplified down, and also notice how much easier it's become for you to like work with all of this stuff. Like those are all things that have been like naturally shifting in your experience. Uh, any other questions?
Sometimes a thought may start to form and I notice the pressure that it produces. And then I just let it fade away. And it fades away. But sometimes it feels like I make an effort to make it fade away. It still fades away, but it feels like I made an effort to make it fade away. If that makes any sense. I don't know what that is.
Well, Sometimes you'll still inadvertently have the knee-jerk reaction of it creating extra pressure around your experience, so you'll associate it with effort. Sometimes, because honestly, it sounds like you were just trying to replicate the times that you've noticed happening naturally. Um, we're practicing or cultivating the quality of release in the body because that's really conducive to opening up to this deeper stuff and sensitivity and making it all just right there. Um, as our body understands, oh yeah, this is good. This makes everything clear. This makes everything better. Oh, when I contract or create pressure, oh yeah, that doesn't feel good. Let me release that. Your body's starting to do that by itself. Your experience is starting to do it by itself. And yeah, the natural evolution is eventually that like you're just consistently noticing that yeah, these like ways of thinking and lenses that I habitually hold, they have pressure. So before you let them crystallize, now that you're sensitive of like the beginnings of the pressure, your body just starts to automatically release it at that level before it gets that deep. Now, your mind noticing that and being like, oh, that's cool. I can release thoughts. I could do that all the time. Now it's like there's like a bit of like arbitrariness to it where it's just like sometimes you'll construct it or desire to like make it happen again. And there's no problem in wanting to experience again. Just notice how it can already happen. And that gives you an easy way to access these experiences without this residue of, I have to make it happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, so appreciate the times in which these things happen by themselves. Like, really allow yourself to sink into that experience when you just spontaneously start going to the spectrum of release. Because by you sinking into those precious moments in which it's happening by itself, you're affirming to your system, yes, this is valuable. Keep doing it. It's like you're giving yourself a reward by appreciating, wow, awesome progress. So, yeah, it's good. Anything else?
Okay. Had something, but I forgot. Can't remember.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, the more you really embody and integrate this stuff, the more it's just kind of your like default. It runs on autopilot. Because in truth, the flow, the dynamism, the openness, it has no real beginning or end. And so you start to experience more of its endlessness, meaning that, you know, it used to be that I would experience these things only when I would intend to practice them. Now they're just parts of my day, and that like naturally I'll slip into like a deeper version of something without even contemplating or intending in a particular way. Because now my system is just like, oh yeah, this is a nice place to be at, to enjoy myself, a nice way. So yeah, I used to have to consciously, I thought I had to try to maintain effort, continuously be present in my body. Now it's like, oh no, there's a natural presence to the body. It can deepen. Most of my presence is like most alive in my peripherals, like my head, my hands, my feet, a little bit of my legs, a lot of my arms. I've got like, I don't want to say dead spots, but places where it doesn't shine as clearly on the inside to my core. So it's like it's been seeping in as I practice with the spaciousness and allow myself to experience how the presence in that is more and more in my body as well. It's like more and more of what I didn't used to feel so deeply, so clearly, so naturally. It starts to come online. And, it gradually just changes you as a person, because when you have these qualities just there, yeah, it's just easier to deal with emotions and the vicissitudes of life. So it's like that's where these like long-term benefits of like awakening and whatnot come in. It's that like your body has adapted to this new way of perceiving. It's stabilized it, and as such, the qualities that arise out of practice become just a natural, ever deepening part of life, because more of your life is noticed as a practice. If the practice is expansion, if the practice is presence, and you're starting to experience that as a way of life because it's so natural that it's even naturally there when you don't intend it, then it makes sense why people would describe all of life as the practice. And you deepen your experience of it not by understanding it more clearly, just by deepening your experience of it. The deeper you go, the more familiar you become, the more opportunity it has to sink even deeper into yourself, into your nervous system, into your cognition, rewiring the way those things work. And yeah, sometimes it'll just arise that we want to lean into these things because we know that it allows us to feel better, and we're noticing that there's something that feels off. And at this point I can tell you, yeah, it's fine to lean into this stuff to feel better. Just notice if there's any effort or pressure associated with viewing it or initiating in that way, and allow that to be released or presenced as part of the process too. Because even if it begins with effort, because you're not used to inclining towards what you want without effort, so long as that effort can be let go of and collapse while you're on the continuum, it's okay. It's okay. That's how you stop like fucking yourself when it comes to applying these things towards things that you want and have an investment in. The investment in the outcome is actually correlated with like the anchoring and the pressure in the nervous system. If the pressure isn't there, then you're not expressing that you need this outcome, which means that you can allow it more, which means that your system responds more readily, because nobody likes to be pressured to do something. It's like if someone asks you, hey, wash the dishes, and you're sitting in the kitchen, and you're like, okay. And in your mind, you're just like, I'm going to do it in a moment. And they're just standing there watching you. Are you going to do the dishes? It's like, you're gonna do it, but now it's begrudgingly. Now you're dragging yourself. You feel uncomfortable. It's like, yo, just, you told me, just let me do it. Like, that's what your conscious is. That's what your body responds to your intentionality like. If you understand that it's already a team player, that you can't fail, that it's ready to listen, and then you don't have to talk to it in a certain way or convince it. You can just suggest it, like, hey, let's do this. Bam. That's how simple it starts to become. Any other final questions?
So then, I guess within this framework of like playing around with different lenses, should I like still anchor myself in the emptiness or noticing everything happening by itself aspect? Like, I guess maybe like formal practice is like that. That's like 20 minutes or like an hour or something like that. And then for the rest of the time, I can be like, oh, let me try this, let me try that, let me look at things this way.
I mean, you can. So long as the qualities are shifting, as the presence is expanding, as release is being created, more often than not. Because sometimes you want to play with different things. Like, that's fine. The key is, it's like, how much time is being spent enjoying these deeper qualities naturally manifesting and expanding. And so in that regard, playing too much at times can have like a sense of effort or creating like some sort of like stickiness around the way that we're relating to all of this. Ideally, over time, we want to get simpler and simpler and simpler, where we're not relying on lenses, because the lenses aren't the point. It's the qualities that they lead to, realizing them directly prior to the concept and getting used to them being there. So, yeah, use what I've suggested as the main practice, play a little bit on occasion, but in service of learning how to express and expand this for yourself. That's pretty much it.
So then do I, what's it called? Trying to think. Hmm? So then should there be like a main that's like, okay, mainly or primarily or something like that? It's emptiness or like everything happening by itself, and then some other stuff on the side, or is it? It can just be a mix of whatever, you know, or what is that?
How do we judge the quality of the practice? How do we assess that the results are good, that this is valuable?
How open you feel, more equanimity, less triggerings, triggerability, um, release, I guess, too.
Yeah. All side effects of the expansion and deepening of presence slash awareness slash consciousness. As long as it leads to that, and you understand how to be sensitive as to when you're efforting or pressuring these things in ways, and how to retool that or turn that into be part of the practice so that it doesn't get in your way, then you kind of start to have free reign in terms of how you want to do things. You should still be seeing a consistent increase in these qualities as part of your baseline experience. That's also another part of it. How easily do you recognize more of this in your day-to-day? So long as these things are opening you up in that way, then it's good. And, you'll be able to tell. Because either this week will go swimmingly and you'll have more insights and be more comfortable with it, or you'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of lost track and like, it wasn't as good as I've experienced it before. But the things that I've mentioned to you in terms of the effort and the pressure and how to like take care of that yourself, like what is actually in the way, if you really understand that and apply that, you'll be able to adapt to, the inadvertent misfires or misuse of these approaches at times. Because in truth, anything can work. That's why just by shifting the definition or your understanding of an approach, it changes the feel of it, the qualities of it. Anything can work. It's about understanding what is it that makes it work. How do you know it's working? How can you make it work? Because at this point, I can use the topic of intense traumatic suffering. And there's no pressure or effort. I just deepen into the quality that arises, it expands. It's not really comfortable in the conventional sense because it's like recalling as a meta category everything in my body and my mind that's associated with like a past of like suffering or resistance. That's becoming more prominent. But the presence is also expanding, which means that it's not really an issue. It's like K-pop. What I'm trying to get at here is that eventually your presence starts intrinsically fixating or contracting around most of your concepts and beliefs. And you can deepen your presence in any way that you like because it's the deepening of presence that matters. Everything else was just training wheels. Answer your question?
Yes.
Anything else?
No.
All right. Then I suppose that is it, Kevo. Keep up the good work. I look forward to hearing about how things go next week. And, yeah, with any luck by then, I'll have, like, recalibrated my sleep schedule so that I don't oversleep past 10. But, yeah, I'll catch you later, man.
All right. See you.
Peace.